Welcome along, ladies and gentlemen. The sun is setting. We're here in the middle of the desert for round 2 of the Formula 1 World Championship in 2019. It's a night race. It's the Bahrain Grand Prix, and it is time for qualifying. This is the capital, Manama. We're about 19 miles or so southwest of the capital city in the Kingdom of Bahrain, which comes from the Arabic Al-Bahrain, meaning the two seas. It really is a fabulous country, this. Through land reclamation, Bahrain's increased from 33 islands to 84. You can still fit 8 Bahrains, though, into the greater area of Shanghai, where we go next in Formula 1, and we go to another fantastic circuit as well. This is the track they're going to be qualifying on tonight, 3.36 miles in length, 3 DRS zones, a new one being added on the run-up to turn 4, the hairpin there. Down at turn 1, you get a lot of action. A triple overtake in 2018 for Lewis Hamilton on the Renault, the Force India and the McLaren. We can fast forward from there all the way up to turn 4. Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas racing in 2017. On the inside, the Ferrari and the Mercedes getting pushed wide and off the track. And it's always a chaotic start here. Even in the middle of the lap down at turn 10, there's not an awful lot of space, and there's plenty of locking up as well. 3 compounds of tyre as ever, soft, medium and hard. Because of the abrasive surface here, Pirelli bring the 3 hardest compounds in their range, and that hard tyre 1.9 seconds per lap slower than the soft tyre. Can anyone take a gamble and run the mediums in Q2 to get through to Q3? Sunset was round about 5 or so minutes ago. It looks an absolute picture, this desert track, where in the past pole position has won 6 out of the previous 14 races, where Sebastian Vettel has been on pole 3 times, and where Martin Brundle, he is certainly in the right car this evening if he wants a 4th.
Well, if we were confused with Ferrari's non-performance in Melbourne, we certainly can't be here. They've been absolutely mighty in terms of outright lap time, and they certainly appear to be the team to beat as well, without any doubt. But they can't be a second clear. That was way more than they were in Barcelona in pre-season testing, and it just looks unrealistic. So I'm expecting it to be closer when it matters, but they do appear to have a firm hold on the front row of the grid. If
you're going to be sandbagging, this is a very good place to do it. There's enough sand to fill those bags with round here. But I'm kind of with you on that one. Surely Mercedes can't be that far back, and surely Red Bull as well, who've had their problems, can't be in so much trouble that certain members of the midfield, Hülkenberg and the Renault, for instance, might be challenging them and getting amongst the 2 Red Bull cars. That would be a shock as well.
It would, and it seems as if they're really not working their tyres well, or because they're making a lot of noise about, look, Honda's right up there now with Renault, with Mercedes, with Ferrari, but Red Bull are not in that sort of territory, so clearly they haven't quite got their chassis where they want it yet in terms of the era. We know how well the Red Bull developed their car through a season, and this team, McLaren, have been going extremely well, looking as if they might have 2 cars in the top 10. Fernando Alonso will test for the team in the week. He's been out testing an off-road truck in the previous week, and obviously got plans ahead with the Indy 500 and what have you, and gets back into the car.
You just can't retire when you're a racing driver, can you? As you proved last week at the Nürburgring.
You can't. You spend all of your life getting up every day, being measured in some way, practice, qualifying, racing, and you lose that. You need that sort of adrenaline rush.
Does he need a return back to Formula 1 full-time, though? He's not ruled it out once again. If there's a great opportunity, he said, I'll come back.
Yes, I think he will. I think the only problem for McLaren is putting him back in the car. Undermines their 2 young drivers in Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz a little bit, but they'll get a lot of valuable information.
I'm looking forward to that intra-team battle, though, at McLaren, that Lando Norris won in Melbourne, of course, and out-qualified Carlos Sainz. And he's shown once again this weekend glimpses of a 1-lap pace that could have Carlos Sainz a bit worried.
Yeah, they're both great little drivers, and Lando Norris has landed in F1 and done a stellar job at all times so far.
Nico Hülkenberg, many expected him to be under huge pressure from his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. So far this weekend, Hülkenberg has been on top. So there's the green light then. The pit lane is open. We've got 18 minutes of Q1 straight into action. Comes Robert Kubica in the Williams. Robert Kubica, who was on pole here in 2008, his only pole position in Formula 1. If he is anywhere closer to pole position than 20th on the grid today, Martin, that will represent a very good performance by Robert Kubica. Not just himself, but the car it's so far off the pace.
It is, unfortunately. They're probably going to be on the back row of the grid. Our beloved Williams team, Sir Patrick Head's gone back into the team to help them on a part-time basis, and they certainly need to regroup there, and we all wish them well in that respect. And how many new parts they've got coming, whether they've got a way to improve the performance of their car, remains to be seen, but it's certainly very difficult days for the Williams team. And Robert Kubica, it's a fairy tale. Will the fairy tale come ultimately completely true for him? And he's got to find some pace if that's going to happen.
Alex Albon in the Toro Rosso, who went great guns with Pierre Gasly here last year under the lights in qualifying. Fifth on the grid, and then Gasly went to finish fourth, one of those performances that got him the drive at Red Bull for this season. George Russell, who has raced here, of course, in his championship-winning F2 season, now finds himself behind the wheel of the second Williams, whose problems in qualifying in Australia were magnified when you looked at the times of the 2018 Australian Grand Prix. Their fastest Q1 time, which George Russell put in, was a tenth slower than their fastest time 12 months beforehand. A car that would normally get faster didn't in Australia. Previous polls, Nico Rosberg was with us on Sky Sports F1 this weekend in 2014, Lewis Hamilton in 2015 and 2016, Valtteri Bottas in 2017, and of course Sebastian Vettel as well for Ferrari. All racing for pole, Bottas and Hamilton and Vettel here this evening. Sky Q customers, you can press your red button now to watch live in Ultra HD if you want to watch this qualifying session in ultra high definition and enjoy up to 4 times the detail of HD. And it looks good enough under the lights as it is, Martin. In Ultra HD, it looks absolutely smashing. But how is that car handling for Robert Kubica out on the track?
Well, I'm sure if any racing driver jumped in that, they'd think it's pretty amazing, actually. I bet it sticks to the road. It certainly has got the best engine in Formula 1 still, probably behind it in the Mercedes. But unfortunately, when it's compared with others, it just doesn't have the cornering speed to go with it. And as we head down, so he'll have to break that a little bit earlier. We saw the car with a bit of imbalance. He was fighting it on the apex of the corner. That means he's delayed on getting on the throttle. That means it costs him time all the way along the next straight as well. And that's where it just ebbs away from you. That's why you end up 2, 3, 4 seconds off the ultimate pole position. These soft tyres marked in red, they've been treating them like a pure qualifier, creeping out of the pits and trying to take as little energy and grip out of them as they can get away with. And he returns immediately to the pit lane because they're really not quite lasting a full lap when you're asking everything from them.
On board with Alex Albon then, who's been setting faster sector times than either George Russell or Robert Kubica. Albon through the final corner. He comes, DRS wide open, reducing the drag, increasing the top speed to 131.125. The Q1 time that was fastest last year, Kimi Raikkonen's 128.9. We've consistently seen, even though the regulations have changed to try and make these cars lose a bit of downforce, go slower, we're seeing the times beaten session after session after session.
I was talking to Lewis about the shiny new tyre with the release agent on the tyre there. Is that a bit of a problem when you first start them? He said it is, especially in the garage where you've got shiny floors as well, and until they get up to temperature, maybe down into the first corner. So it's to improve the quality of the surface of the tyre this year, and you'll see it a lot, those shiny new tyres.
I think something trailing from the back of the Williams there. Just I hope it's nothing too serious at all. It's like a bit of tape that's got stuck on the back of the car. George Russell, one of 2 men to hail from Kings Lynn and race in Formula 1.
Indeed.
I forget who the other one was. It's just gone completely out of my head.
Yeah, they breathe him tough in Kings Lynn. You can see a puff of black smoke coming out of the brakes there, like dust, I should call it. Because they're now into parc fermé conditions. This means they can't work on the cars until the first pit stop in the race, effectively, so before the race, other than 2 or 3 small aspects they can address. And so they've got brand new brakes on. These are the brakes they will go into the race with, so they tend to just get the furry stuff off the surface when they hit them for the first time.
Robert Kubica then back in the garage. He's not alone in that. There's plenty of drivers in the garage at the moment, and What was he not particularly happy with that they can do something about after that first run, going wide at turn 4? We've seen a fair few drivers do that. It's one of the higher elevated parts of the track as well, Martin. When you get a crosswind up there, which we have this evening, it makes it even trickier for the drivers.
Yeah, we call it a throttle, they call it torque demand in Formula One circles with the clever people. Yeah, he asked for some engine power, and the rear tyres had not got enough. There was not enough downforce pressing them down for Robert Kubica there. We saw that replay back in turn 4, and the back of the car tried to get away from him.
Lando Norris, who was on pole this time last year in F2, eventually finished up as runner-up to George Russell on his way, and Valtteri Bottas now out of the pits as they all start filing out. They've let a few cars come onto the track, try and clean it up a little bit, get rid of some of the dust lying on the surface, and now the big boys are back on the track. Valtteri Bottas, who's never been out-qualified by a teammate in Bahrain, leads the World Championship for the first time in his career as well, and returned to the track where he took his maiden pole. First of his 6 poles in Formula One back in 2017. Let's head down to the pit lane. Good evening, Karun Chandok.
Yeah, good evening, Crofty. The sound you can hear is Pierre Gasly's Red Bull heading out on track. As you say, the heavy hitters. Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, by the way, were released just behind the Mercedes cars. And in fact, Seb backed off in the pit lane. He trundled through the pit lane really slowly to try and create a gap. So, you know, it's funny, isn't it? They all sort of wait. And clearly, they've all picked the same optimum moment in those two garages to leave the pits.
Lewis Hamilton, 84 career poles, the same number as the rest of the grid combined. If he gets pole position tonight, it'll be his 59th pole for Mercedes-Benz as well, which will be a new record in Formula One for the most poles by a driver at a single team.
18 of the 20 cars on track. Let's see who trips over who. We saw Leclerc, didn't we, last night? Not that bothered about being quite close behind his own teammate, as if he may be looking for a bit of a slipstream and a little bit of a tow down the straights from, on this occasion, the Mercedes, maybe.
Ferrari fastest in all 3 practice sessions so far, and Charles Leclerc has been quickest in 2 of them. Can he do it where it really counts the most this evening, though? Lando Norris giving it absolutely everything in his McLaren. He's been running fairly well so far this weekend, and he's on course to beat Alex Albon, but he's had to back right off because the Haas in the final corner there was right in his way.
And he nearly dropped it as well when he hit the throttle, did Grosjean. So that was quite clearly a block, and you're not allowed to block in qualifying.
So Romain Grosjean's backing off to make himself a little bit of space behind Sebastian Vettel, but he's backing off too much, and he's on the racing line.
That could have been a very nasty accident. And I had a team manager telling me on the way flying over here that Haas do not tell their drivers about traffic. They leave them to look in the mirror. I find that amazing. Yeah. But they say they listen to the Haas radio. They listen into each other's radios, and they don't tell the drivers about impending cars coming up behind them, because that could easily be a penalty there for Grosjean.
That's certainly something that the new F1 race director, Michael Massey, would be looking at along with the stewards. You would imagine there, I think the policy from the FIA, after a briefing with the drivers as well, let them race, you know, try and keep a hands-off approach and trust them and leave them to it as Valtteri Bottas goes quickest and into the 129s. But that's the sort of thing, surely, that does need a bit of looking at. Lewis Hamilton next across the line, 2 tenths behind his teammate Valtteri Bottas. Here comes Charles Leclerc, quickest in the middle and the final sector. Quickest, Martin, by some margin as he crosses the line. He's a second clear of Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes.
Well, they appear to have a second lap in their pocket, and it's carrying on that way, and it's carrying on that Leclerc has the edge over his teammate Vettel.
This time last fortnight ago, we were watching the Ferrari team principal shake his head on the pit wall. I think tonight we might see Toto Wolff shaking his head on the pit wall if Ferrari keep up this pace, Nico Rosberg.
Yeah, unbelievable pace they're showing out. They're really, really strong. So at the moment, it really looks like it's going to be between the 2 Ferrari guys. And also just going back to the incident there with Lando Norris. I mean, Grosjean, that was really, really bad. He definitely deserves some kind of a penalty for that because it was really dangerous.
And as you say it, Nico, up pops on our data screens, turn 14 incident involving Romain Grosjean and Lando Norris being investigated.
Because Norris has to go again now, has to sacrifice another set of tyres. He's been heavily compromised in that. It wasn't too bad a time despite the blockage, and he got a bit squirrely, didn't he? 2 corners from home, did Norris, when we went on board with him, and then quite clearly badly blocked in the final turn. The
thing is, if they weren't tiptoeing around so slowly on the outlap, then you wouldn't get the closing speeds, the huge difference in closing speeds that we witnessed there. I mean, they're probably still going to be backing off to make a gap or 3, but because they're going so slow on that outlap, it rather exasperates the problem. I mean, if you're Lando Norris here, I wouldn't like to repeat what he might have been shouting under his helmet on a family show.
This guy just blocked me in the final corner.
Lando rather backing up what I thought.
And Romain Grosjean suddenly realising what he was up to, gave it a big squirt of throttle and nearly dropped it.
Oh dear. Watching now, Alex Albon in the Toro Rosso on the soft compound tyre. Albon was out there early and he's going for it again. They're probably going to use 3 sets of the soft tyres in the Toro Rosso to try and get out of Q1. Christian Horner on the Red Bull pit wall watching along. Well, we're wondering if that Ferrari pace we've seen in practice, Christian, is genuine or not, but do we still think they're a second clear of the rest of the field?
That's a blistering lap time first out. The track will ramp up. And they've been mighty all weekend, but hopefully they won't be that far ahead by the time we get to Q3.
P6 and P12 at the moment, Christian. A little bit nervy. That's not quite where you expected to be, I imagine.
Yeah, it's a bit too close for comfort, so particularly with Pierre. So yeah, it's all about what the cut-offs are, what you believe them to be, and the confidence you have in them.
We heard you, Christian, in our pre-show build-up saying that if we can sneak on to the second row, that'd be a really good thing. Do you feel that Renault, though, could be a challenger to that? Because Hülkenberg's been setting fast times all weekend long.
Yeah, they've been quick. I mean, obviously the Haas has been quick as well. So yeah, let's see as the the qualifying progresses, and once we get towards the business end, then obviously that's where everything gets unleashed.
Thank you very much, Christian. We'll be back with you in a short while as we saw Sebastian Vettel locking up, quite a big lock up there, Martin. Charles Leclerc now coming back into the pit lane. It's easy to lock up into turn 1 here.
So it's been Vettel trying the braking point on his in-lap. Yep. He's not done any much. Couldn't have been his fast lap, obviously, because he was way off the racetrack. So he's burned a set of tyres, but I wonder if that was Vettel trying to find himself a different braking point down into turn 1 that clearly is not the right braking point.
I'm just watching Charles Leclerc here, getting past the slower moving Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. They were both, I'm sure, on slower laps at the time. Let's head down to Karun.
Yeah, guys, just looking at the cut-off times Christian mentioned, it sort of depends on who and what you believe. But a couple of the teams I spoke to reckon a high 129, a sort of 29.8, 29.7 is what you need to get into Q2. And at the moment, one of his cars, Pierre Gasly, at a 30.25. So outside of that, I'm standing near the Red Bull garage. They have put another set of tyres on, which, don't forget, in Melbourne, he didn't get that second opportunity. So they're not taking any chances here this weekend.
Well, it's interesting what you say there, Karun. If 129.7 is the cut-off time, Lewis Hamilton has a 129.726, then surely Mercedes won't be thinking he's safe at all, Martin. And it backs up what Christian was saying, that the track is going to ramp up. The times are going to get significantly faster.
Yeah, Lewis is nowhere near comfortable in that position, I would say. So quite a busy last couple of minutes out on track.
And Lewis is actually, while we're watching the Red Bull garage, Lewis is actually setting another fast lap here, or going for a fast lap. And he's already about 6/10 down on the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc through the first 2 sectors. He's coming up to the final couple of corners now. Danny Kvyat very much in the bottom 5, along with Giovinazzi and Perez and Kubica and Russell. Perez, who hasn't reached Q3 here since 2014. Hamilton goes 3rd fastest with a 129.2. That should safely see him through.
Absolutely, just gets him ahead of Valtteri Bottas at this stage. Of course, when they get through, it's just a matter of resetting then, apart from the final 5.
This is on that lap with Lewis Hamilton. I think the wind here, Martin, we're protected in a nice, warm, cosy commentary box here, but we shouldn't forget just how breezy it is out on that track.
I think these cars are more susceptible to it, though, because it's only a metre per second. It's not that windy out there, but I do think the new aero, see the cars, whatever, with the wider front wings, the taller rear wings, whatever it is, they do seem to be more susceptible to crosswind.
So that's where Lewis Hamilton is losing the most time, through sector 1 to the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Pretty much been that way all weekend, where the Ferrari's been very strong indeed through that first sector. And out on the track with 2 minutes to go at the moment, everyone from Romain Grosjean down to George Russell, plus Carlos Sainz, and Hamilton still on the track after just setting that lap time of a 1:29.2. So do McLaren think that Carlos Sainz could be in a bit of danger here with a 1:29.5? And if that's the case, why is Kevin Magnussen and Max Verstappen still in the garage? Because they're both in the 1:29.5s as well.
And if they're not out on track now, and 15 of them are, 5 of them are not, then they've missed the moment.
Remember, of course, that last week, Pierre Gasly sat, 2 weeks ago, I should say, last race, Pierre Gasly sat in the garage watching the track ramp up in Australia, and he could do nothing about those lap times getting faster and faster, and he was knocked out in Q1. Danny Kvyat starts his latest flying lap. Let's head down to Karun.
Max Verstappen definitely not going out, guys. So as Martin said, it's a bit late now, but they're willing to brave it out with Max on this one.
Well, saving tyres, of course, if they do so. But it's like the lottery, you've got to be in it to win it. And at the moment, they are not in it in terms of this Q1 session. So who's going to be setting fastest times? Danny Kvyat through the first sector puts in a personal best, 28.5. So he's very much within inside a time in that sector that he needs to get out of the bottom 5. Kvyat and Giovinazzi and Perez, who's been eliminated in Q1 here for 2 of the last 3 years, and Kubica and George Russell all scrapping for their Bahrain Grand Prix qualifying lives at the moment.
So 6 cars are now in the pit lane as we head into these closing seconds. Of course, you can finish your flying lap, providing you start it before crossing the line and seeing the checkered flag.
There's green sectors being set all over the place at the moment. Stroll, Kvyat and Giovinazzi all within a tenth of a second of each other through the first sector. Same for Norris, Hülkenberg and Grosjean, but they're about 2 tenths up. Let's focus on Danny Kvyat now through the final couple of corners. And that Toro Rosso with the sparks flying out from underneath. He'll see the checkered flag. Can he get himself out of the bottom 5? Yes, he can. He goes 9th fastest and into the 1:29s for Danny Kvyat. Lando Norris, who seemingly hampered by Romain Grosjean on his first flying lap, crosses the line and goes 4th fastest. Very good lap once again from the young 19-year-old. Kimi Räikkönen is behind his teammate Antonio Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi goes out of the bottom 5, pushes Hülkenberg into it. Räikkönen crosses the line, stays in 11th place. He's a bit on the cusp there, is Kimi Räikkönen, as Alex Albon goes 6th fastest, pushes Räikkönen down to 12th. George Russell next across the line goes ahead of his teammate Robert Kubica, who's still out on the track. Lance Stroll next across the line. He's out of the bottom 5, but only just 15th fastest, as Hülkenberg then pushes him into the bottom 5. It's 6 Q1 eliminations in a row for Stroll. Ricciardo is now on the cusp. Gasly's down there for Red Bull as well. Perez is trying to scrap away, as we can see now, riding on board with the Racing Point, gets out of Q1, but only just. The 2 Renaults really struggling, along with Pierre Gasly, who goes 13th fastest only, and Giovinazzi's pushed down, and if Ricciardo goes 11th, Kimi Räikkönen still very much on the cusp, but I think he's going to get away with it just because Nico Hülkenberg stays down in the bottom 5.
That's the shocker of that session, isn't it? Nico Hülkenberg, who's been sort of top 6 material through free practice, did not get through. He had a poor final, a relatively poor final sector. Whether he made a mistake, got a bit of traffic, maybe we'll hear from him shortly. But Hülkenberg, that really is a shock.
Well, he's only 7/100ths of a second from safety there. And that safety margin is Kimi Räikkönen with a 1:29.9. Giovinazzi, the man we're on board at the moment, right in between them. Fine margins down at the bottom, but I was looking at the times, every driver moving about, thinking, right, Hulkenberg's going to pop up. Ricciardo's done it, not a problem at all for the Renault, but it just didn't happen for him, and that is a huge shocker for Nico Hulkenberg, who was 7th on the grid here in the last 2 seasons and 8th on the grid for the 2 years before that.
Every day is better with friends.